Hi guys, welcome back to the Academy of Historical Fencing. I'm Nick Thomas and today here to talk to you about the Black Fencer Spadroon. I talk about Spadroons quite a lot and I think they deserve to be talked about whether you like them or not. They're a huge part of our military swordsmanship history, so they're a really important weapon historically, and actually they're a whole lot of fun to fight with, even if you wouldn't necessarily want to have to put your life in their hands. But they're not necessarily as bad as people think, and as I said, they're really significant to what we study because we work from Roworth and Angelo, and it is British military swordsmanship on foot, and that's a universal system for Spadroon, sabre and broadsword. So it's a really important part of the system. So I'm not saying you must go and do it or something like that. If you want to just use sabres, just use your sabres. I mean, not every person would have had to have used a Spadroon, but many did. Anyway, Black Fencer, this is the current generation Spadroon, which you can buy on their web shop. So it is available now, and it is excellent, basically. In short, you could just stop the review here and go and buy one. They're excellent. But if you'd like to know a little bit more, you can carry on watching, and I'll give you an overview to how they compare to originals and how basically we got to this point. So, the long story is, this is an original British 1796 patent Spadroon. I've now got a few of them. In fact, I've just got a new one today, which I can get to show off as well. And they were used by officers, but they were also used by NCOs, so sergeants. And this new one that I've got today is a sergeant's model, and it functionally is the same weapon. It just is a little simpler. It doesn't have any blue and gilt and detailing, and the fittings are a bit simpler, but functionally it's the same weapon. So not just for officers, for sergeants as well. So they would have been a very common, well, comparatively for a sword, common, because a bayonet would be a more common weapon. But yeah, so sergeants and officers carrying a lot of Spadroons at the time, and they range in weight from something like 650 grams at the very light end. I'm talking about the ones with double shells like this, not the earlier examples. The 1796 always has double shells. Sometimes one folds, sometimes it doesn't. You see, this is a fixed guard version, which I think is far superior. The folding guard is really just for sitting flush in a uniform, and I think it is quite a compromise of the design. So yeah, this is a fixed guard version. They range from about 650 grams at the low end up to about 750, and sometimes a bit beyond that. This is 750, and this is one of the heavier examples I've seen, but there are a few heavier again. But yeah, this is quite a meaty example of the Spadroon, and the sergeant's one I showed there is equally as substantial. The hilt is a little bit lighter, but the blade is at least as strong as this one. When I say the hilt is lighter, it's a bit smaller because this is an oversized hilt. Anyway, that's the spectrum that you're looking at. The blades were by regulation, they were 32 inch, although in reality a lot of them are shorter and occasionally they're a bit longer, so you're going to find variety. But you're talking about 32 inches is typical, and they tend to balance relatively close to the hilt, around about 8 to 11 centimeters, closer therefore than they say most sabres, because the hilt is quite heavy and the blade is comparatively light. It's called at the time a Spadroon or a cut and thrust sword, and that is because it's intended as a essentially a 50-50 hybrid cut and thrust weapon. So it's in between a small sword, which is thrust only, and a broadsword, which is cut and thrust, but it's a heavy cutter. So yeah, this is right in between the two. So it's a light broadsword, if you like, or a light backsword, considering it's single-edged. So that's an overview to the weapon. You're talking about something that is quite agile. It doesn't cut that powerfully, but it can cut, and therefore it's in between small sword and broadsword. That's an overview to the weapon. So, 2 years ago, roughly, I talked to Black Fencer about developing a Spadroon, because I worked with them to get the current V5, what's called the 1796 infantry sabre, to where it is today, to try and match originals as best as possible, because I wanted something that could match the original swords as best as they possibly could, and they do now do that really well. And I'm all out of ideas for now on how they can actually improve them, because I am not happy with them, which is excellent. Anyway, 2 years ago, I then pushed them to make a Spadroon, because they already do broadswords, they have done for quite some time, and they didn't make a Spadroon. In fact, almost nobody makes a Spadroon. They're one of the least made weapons in the HEMA community, and probably the least practiced weapons in the HEMA community. But the cult of the Spadroon is getting some traction. So we are getting there, it's coming forward. So 2 years ago I got Black Fencer to make me a Spadroon. I gave them some rough specifications and then let them roll with it. And what came out of that was this, and I've used this in a lot of sparring videos, and it was quite good. And I'm still, I still use it now. I've actually got the replacement, so I don't use it personally as much, but people borrow it all the time. So it was good. It came at 680 grams, so it was in the historical range, just slightly towards the lighter end of the scale, but it's quite common. And it was good, it was functional, it flexes really well, it doesn't feel especially strong in the bind, which a lot of them don't, so that's accurate. It had the space to get the glove in, but it isn't that attractive, and the shell, as you can see, is quite thin. And this gets hammered down. Every few weeks I get pliers on it and bend it back into shape. So it's still going strong, and at some point, if that does break, I'll cut it off and have a Spadroon without a shell, which the early period Spadroon, when I say early period, the early military pattern period Spadroons didn't usually have shells. So that's fine, that's what it'll become. And yeah, it worked well, but that was just essentially a prototype. Then I took what we learned from this and experimentation and gave them a load of ideas on to make the next one. So what came of that is the shells are now reshaped to be a more authentic shape to the originals, and they're much thicker. As you can see, they are really tough. I've never had to bend these back into shape. They are much, much tougher. And the way they are welded to the quillen is also much tougher and better than the way the original one was done. The knuckle bow also has changed in shape, and that is mainly an aesthetic thing because the original Spadroons were typically a sort of D-shape knuckle bow. Words are failing me tonight, and that's designed to match the original. And as you can see, in terms of length, the length of the hilt is actually about the same because this has the whole pinned sort of button section on the end, whereas they are roughly the same length, but this one just has more glove space to get basically a red dragon claw or similar in there. And you will need it because you might think a Spadroon hits light, but it doesn't hit that light. You will be surprised. You can still develop some serious power with this. So don't underestimate it and use a leather glove like you might with a small sword. That would be a huge mistake. Anyway, I also asked for the blade length to be a little bit longer, and it came out a little bit too long. So the first one they made me was about 80 centimeters, maybe 81. This one's 85. Actually, I'd like it to be about 82, maybe 83, 82 to 83. But when you get them to make one, just tell them that. They'll make it any length you want. I recommend 82 or 83 centimeters for the blade length. But anyway, and I could cut this down very easily because the point on it has got loads of room to grind it down, and I probably will at some point in the next few weeks. I've just not got around to it. But again, there was variation. There were some longer lengths out there, so not a problem. What else? Oh, the quillen on the back is reshaped to be more like the original as well. So overall, they match the spec to original Spadroon better. It's aesthetically far more pleasing, and it's also a hell of a lot tougher, as it's very tough in fact. And as you can see, the knuckle bow welds onto the pommel as it did on the first generation. That's a really good idea because if you ever had a sword like this where it doesn't do that, when the knuckle bow starts to take hits, it'll bend side to side and potentially cave in as well. So welding it to the pommel adds a massive amount of structural integrity, so that's a really good thing. Right, so specification-wise, 752 grams, which means it's only 2 grams heavier than the Spadroon I just showed you. And as I said, it came out a little bit long, so if I actually cut that off, it would probably come out weight-wise in between the officers and sergeants versions that I just showed you there. So you're talking about a training sword that exactly matches some of the original examples that I've shown you. The balance has come out at about 9 centimeters. So of my originals, the sergeant's one actually is unusually forward of 13 centimeters. My officer's ones are about, I think it's 8 and 11 centimeters. So it's bang on. Balance is right. The flexibility is excellent on the thrust. And again, it doesn't feel particularly strong on a parry compared to a saber, which is exactly as the originals, most of the originals were. So what you've essentially got is something that does actually look, handle and act like a real Spadroon. So yes, I'm bloody well impressed. They have nailed it. If I was to change anything, as I said, I would just have the blade made at 82 or 83 centimetres, and I think that's probably all I would change. I don't like having to have oversized hilts, but it is necessary because you do need something like a Red Dragon glove in this. You can't really wear a leather glove. So that's as basically as small as I think you can get away with. It's about right, works well, and yeah, I just find it works perfectly. And on the note that I said that, yeah, not many companies are making Spadroons, essentially almost nobody is making them, and the ones that are being made are crap. In theory, you could get a Spadroon to work, but it's difficult, and I've had enough trouble getting sabres made in steel. And I have had some steel Spadroons, and I've broken every single one of them for training. And the problem is you've got a comparatively light blade, and you're not going to use it just against other Spadroons, you're going to use it against sabres, cavalry swords, and all sorts of things, so you need something durable. And these synthetic blades are incredibly durable, to the extent that Mike often steals this Spadroon to just use with shields and stuff like that, because it's, you know, it's to hand. So we've hammered the hell out of this against all manner of swords, and it's not taking any damage of note at all. It is really tough. So yeah, it looks right, it handles right, it flexes well. There's more flex in it than realistically any other Black Fencer product besides the rapier. And in fact, this blade is of a similar construction to their rapiers, it's just a little bit shorter. So yeah, it works really, really well. So if you want to get into Spadroon, I would highly, highly recommend that you get this model. And as I said, it is on their web shop. I don't think there are photos of it, but I will post a link in the comments section where you can go straight to it. So there you go, Black Fencer Spadroon. We finally have a production model Spadroon that actually works. It's a miracle. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll show you more about that Sergeant Spadroon soon as well, because Spadroons are life after all. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do so.